Conversations with Iris. Here's your host, my loving wife, Iris.
Hola, mi gente bonita. Hello, beautiful people out there. Welcome back to another conversation on your beautiful Friday Conversations with Iris, where we talk about moments that change us and the decisions that shape us, who we become afterwards. Yes, I love to bring you guys that sazon, that flavor, that Goyaness. As a proud Latina here, I just love to bring you guys conversations full of people that are trying to raise awareness, bring a cause, talk to you about a story, trying to teach others about what they've been through so you don't go through them. Continue to hit download, please. Continue to fuel this little podcast that could, because we are growing, baby, and I'm hoping to continue to grow with you. I'm just getting started and I have a whole bunch of great things in store for you all. Now, let me take you guys into today's conversation because it's exciting because I feel like today's conversation isn't loud. It isn't hustle culture. It's not about hustling culture. It isn't about 10 steps to dominate your industry. It's about slowing down a little bit here. It's about interruption. It's about rebuilding. I love that word, rebuilding. We could all use a little bit of that, right? It's about how the smallest decisions quietly determine the quality of our lives, to be honest with you. Let me tell you guys a little bit about our guest today. He is a phenomenal executive coach, a strategist, an author. He worked with so many leaders for nearly 30 years, navigating disruption and reinvention. But what makes him powerful isn't just his experience, it's his perspective, his philosophy, which is what I find very interesting. Leadership isn't built in grand speeches, it's built on those small choices we make daily, right? We hear that a lot. And if that isn't enough, he also draws leadership lessons from wood turning. Yes, wood turning that would just change somebody's perspective. Because sometimes forcing the cut ruins the peace, and sometimes forcing leadership does not it's not the same or equally across the world for some individuals. So please help me welcome this awesome, awesome guest, Chip Scholz, to Conversations with Iris. Bienvenidos, amigo.
Uh, Buenos dias, and let's see. I can try out all the Spanish I know, which is very little. Anyway, yeah, I'm so glad to be here.
I am so glad that you're tuning in. And also, you had mentioned you're tuning in from North Carolina. So
Yeah,
that's
just up
very
the road from you.
exciting. Yes, I'm over here in Orlando. So we're not too far. We're still Southern folks, right?
Well, you're down in the mouse's house.
That's right. We're surrounded by that water. So we definitely know the deal. And by Disney for sure. So, hey, you're not missing much over here. Just a lot of tourism for real. I'll
That's
tell
it.
you that much. Chip,
You know,
I just, no, go ahead.
just real quickly. Orlando is probably my least favorite airport, and the reason is because there are 4,000 kids there, 2,000 that are screaming because they're so excited that they haven't been there yet, and 2,000 that are screaming because they're so tired after being there, and
Oh
so you
my
get
God.
4,000 screaming kids. But
I am so glad you're saying that because I am not a fan of that MCO airport at all. I am not a fan. The carpet pisses me off. I know this is weird. I know this is something like the carpet, but you guys don't understand. If you're trying to run to catch your flight and you hit terminal B and you're trying to like drag your luggage into this stupid, ugly 1980s rug. And it's just such an outdated airport that it's just like, oh, I'm so over it. I just don't like it. We have what, an A, B, and C terminal, but it is just such a old school airport that they finally announced. I don't know if you know this, but they were gonna actually update it finally,
are
So
they really? Wow,
yeah,
that's good news.
I'm hoping that they do update it because even I hate to throw them out there, but even LaGuardia, I mean, I was like, wow, this airport got an update. I mean, they finally changed up a couple things, but Orlando need to get their act together, baby. They do.
You sound like you travel as much as I do.
Oh yes, for work I do. It's a lot of meetings and all that stuff. And telling you, Orlando needs. I've seen a lot of airports. We need to get it together. It's not
Yeah.
bad, Terminal C, but we could do better, right?
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, Charlotte is a wonderful airport to travel into and out of. So, if you ever decide to move a little bit north,
Yes, I've heard the same thing too. That's a pretty good airport myself, so I've heard about that. But Chip, I want to start here because you are successful. I mean, or you were successful, you were moving fast, and then life just stopped out of nowhere when that stroke happened to you. You went through a stroke. And what was the very first internal shift that you were like, oh my God, the motivational answer that just changed your life?
Well, first, it's a lot of shock, when and I never passed out. I never lost consciousness. But it's that dawning realization that life is never going to be the same.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and so, um, the internal shift took time. The internal shift took my grandmother used to call it navel gazing, where you do some introspection. But the internal shift really um, is about reframing not so much who you are, but how you move through the world.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. That's a very nice perspective to put it into. Can you repeat again what your grandmother had said again? I love
she,
that.
she called it navel gazing.
Navel gazing. Look at that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness. So you said something that really hit me, because I like to research all my guests very thoroughly. And you said dying is easy. Living with a brain that disappears is not. That's very heavy. That's very, very heavy.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and I,
And that's the easy thing. If I were dead, hey, I'm gone. I'm moved on to the next level or
Mhm.
whatever. However you believe. But yeah, yeah. So let me give you some idea of what was going on
Yeah.
before the stroke. I was sleeping maybe 4 or 5 hours a night. I was constantly moving. I was constantly doing emails and phone calls, and I was traveling like crazy. I mean, there
Mm.
was one week that I started off in Newark and went to Atlanta, and then to Dallas, and then to LA, and I was back home by Saturday afternoon after those four cities. It was crazy, and so I got to the point where I was 350 pounds.
Wow.
I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes out of control. I just wasn't taking care of myself, and the stroke hit, and one of the big internal shifts is is realizing that you have to do something different.
Mm.
That you can't keep on going the same way.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, one of the things that I started doing is I started walking. And at first, I couldn't walk around the block, and by the end of 2 years after the stroke, I walked 3,500 miles.
Look at
Um,
that.
I
Wow.
started sleeping, and when I came home from the stroke, I was actually in Florida. I was down in Jacksonville when the stroke hit, and after my wife collected me and brought me home, I slept for the first 2 weeks, probably 25 hours a day, not 25 hours a day, but 20 hours a day, and and I realized the transformative power of sleep. And so, if I don't get 8 hours a night, I'm kind of wrecked.
Wow.
And I recently did some overseas travel, and when you go to Asia, you've got 12 hours difference, and it kind of messed with my mind and took me a while to recover. But you have to reset. And here's one of the other things. So I lost 110 pounds after the stroke. Um,
Wow.
you have to reset because I kept thinking that I was 350 pounds, and all of a sudden I'm not. And 240 may sound like a lot, but I'm pretty big framed and over 6 foot, and so I carry it well. Um, but you start to have to think of yourself as a skinny person, and after being a heavy person for a lot of life, that's a big shift. That's a big change in mindset.
Wow. And I just wanted to say something that you mentioned. I mean, you mentioned that after the stroke, you had this period of it sounds like you had to learn how to relax. You slept in for 20 hours, pretty much that's what you were sleeping. It's funny when you take a moment like that from especially being very high paced and goal oriented individual as you sounded like you were crazy busy working, you had the stroke. But then it's funny, like when you take time to really rest or you suffer a stroke or whatever health condition you do, you don't realize how tired you were until you take that break. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Like you don't realize how much of a reset your body needed until you take that break. Or you sleeping 20 hours a day, it's probably something that your body needed, right? I'm pretty sure your body needed that
Oh
to
yeah,
recover.
yeah. And you've got to heal, and so I think the severity of the stroke was made worse by I didn't recognize it was a stroke when it was happening, and so it was several hours before I got any treatment
Wow.
and recognized because you just believe you're bulletproof.
Mhm.
Especially as a male
Yeah.
in society, you don't think about your mortality. You don't think about the fact that you can go down. Your job is to be to be strong, and all of a sudden when that illusion is taken away from you, wow, that is
Mm.
God, that's well, it's life changing.
Wow. And you took that time to heal, due to that severity of that stroke. What happened to you, Chip? What changed after that? Fast forward a little bit after the stroke there. What was that little, you know, light that just went in your head and you were like, I'm going to make a change. This is time
Well,
for me to do
there was
something
there was
different.
business that I didn't want to do anymore.
Mhm.
Um, I wanted to do the quality business, not the quantity business. And so it was interesting. I had a fairly robust coaching practice and still do, and I think at the time I had like 43 coaching clients. Um, all but one stayed with me through the stroke.
Wow.
Yeah, and here's the difference in a coaching business. A
Mhm.
lot of coaches are fairly transactional. Um, I create relationships. So my longest standing coaching client is 20 years.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. That
And
speaks volume a lot there.
yeah, well, and it's the quality of relationship that really counts, and that's why I ended up coaching, because when I was trying to be a platform speaker, a motivational speaker. um, Motivational speakers go on stage, they do their thing for an hour, then they get back on an airplane and fly home, and nobody cares.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
true though. It's so true.
yeah,
Nobody remembers. That's awesome. It's all about that quality versus quantity. It's definitely a big game changer.
yep,
Oh
yep.
my goodness.
But, listen, I think we all have setbacks. I mean, the stroke was a big deal, and I don't mind talking about it. But we all have setbacks. I mean,
Yeah.
if you lived through the dot-com bubble in 2001, if you lived through the Great Recession in 2008, 2009,
Mhm.
2007, even,
COVID.
if and if you're Orlando, you definitely did. Um, if you have been through all the bumps and grinds, May of '98, I got laid off from a job that was a really good job, and I could either go home and suck my thumb, or I could make something out of it, and that's when I chose. My wife and I moved from Los Angeles to North Carolina, with a 19-foot travel trailer and two dogs, five cats, and three humans, and spent a month and a half on the road getting to North
Wow.
Carolina and changed the life. So,
Wow.
I can't say it was easy. And certainly there were a lot of bumps along the way. But life is a series of curveballs, and
It
it's just
really
how
is.
you handle the curveballs. And my philosophy, I've got a couple um, that I live by. One is failure is not an option. And
Mm-hmm.
that sounds pretty trite. But to me, look, we fail all the time. And just because you fail doesn't mean that you're a failure. What it means is that you just haven't learned the right way to succeed yet. And so ultimately it's about succeeding. And talking about the stroke, I always knew that I was going to get better. Uh,
Yeah.
After 3 months, I still wasn't really better. And my doctor said, I think you got what you got. And I didn't accept that. And that was that failure is not an option. The other one is Semper Gumby, and I don't know if you know who Gumby is. Gumby was a claymation character back. He was the
Yes. Oh my God.
and
Wait a minute. I have to sing the song Gumby. Gumby. Yes, he was. I remember him. I mean, we used to
yeah,
watch Nick at Night, my brother and I, in
that's
the
it.
90s this time. Yeah.
That's it. So my saying is Semper Gumby, which is always flexible. Semper, which is always, and flexible, uh, which is Gumby. And so Semper Gumby. So
Funny.
so when you put the two in combination and think that failure is not an option, and oh yeah, by the way, Semper Gumby. Well, I'm not going to get locked into a certain way of doing things. I'm not going to get locked into a certain way of thinking, and so I need to be mentally flexible enough, and I need to be psychologically flexible enough to be able to handle all of the things that come my way.
Mm. And I like how you talked about how that small decision, right? Just change your life. You did a big shift. I mean, you basically moved your family from LA to North Carolina,
Yep.
took all your family with you. You started rebuilding your life with that little small decision at that time. I feel like that's powerful because we live in a culture that wants overnight transformation, right?
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
do. It's crazy. It's like progressing 110% fast speed. But that little small decision, did you ever feel like people underestimated that? Do you feel like that's what changed everything?
Um, I've made a living out of being underestimated, Iris. So
Mhm.
it's I think you get underestimated all the time. I'm sure
Oh,
my
yeah.
friends in LA thought that I was absolutely nuts for picking up and pulling up stakes and moving out of the town. Um, Again, if failure is not an option, and if you're forever flexible, um, you're going to make it work.
Yeah. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. I love how you mentioned that because I feel like that took a lot of guts. That took a lot of courage for you to basically do the change that you did. I mean, make the change that you just had to do for your family, you know? And I want to just follow up on that because your book, Small Decisions, Big Shift, is grounded on that idea. I don't know why. I just thought about that, your book, because if someone was listening right now that feels stuck or burned out or questioning why they feel a certain way, where would you suggest for them to start? What would be that first decision they could learn how to make or feel that courage to make?
I heard a statistic a while back, and it blew my mind, that 90% of heart patients were either back on the table or dead in 3 years because they refused to change.
Wow.
Think about that. You're
Wow.
talking about you're talking about your impending death, and you refuse to do the things you need to do to succeed, to survive, to live. That blows my mind, which leads me to a corollary to that, which is we are rarely the architects of our own change.
Mm.
Well,
Architects of our own change. I love that.
yeah, and if you realize, and if you get in your head that we are rarely the architects of our own change, and you say, well, by God, I'm going to be different. So it's it's waking up in the morning and saying, if things are different today, what is one small change that I notice?
Mm.
And if you notice that one small change when you wake up in the morning, um, then what caused that change? So it's little things. It's a small decision. It's going to bed and not having the snack at 11 o'clock. It's taking the dog for a walk after dinner.
Yeah.
It's not anything dramatic. It's not like you got to put on togs and go to the gym and be a gym rat 3 hours a day. You know,
Yeah.
with YouTube and with so many things that are on these days, you can find yoga routines that are beginning yoga routines. And if you don't want to go to a studio, just look up a yoga routine, a beginning yoga routine, and do
Something
it
as
for 15
simple as
minutes.
yeah, yeah. Little things like that, right?
Yeah,
Meditate. Like
yeah.
take a moment for yourself, whether if it's prayer or not. Just doing that.
Well, and we always set deadlines for ourselves, and then we get pissed off when we don't reach the deadline. I'm going to start my diet on Tuesday, or I'm going to start going to the gym once a week, starting after the new year.
Mm.
Well, if you want to do it, do it.
Yeah.
Don't have 2 weeks of eating like crazy and not working out and all that kind of stuff, and then try to dive into it. Again, you've got to make those small adjustments.
Mm. And I definitely want to shift and talk about that leadership aspect of it that you talk about, right? The leadership without that force. I definitely want to touch base on that because I love how you bring into this wood turning analogy. I mentioned that on the introduction because I love that. Let me tell you something. I love that. I'm a corporate lady. I work with a lot of males, and I like how you say leadership and wood turning have unexpected parallels. That's so true. That's so true. So explain this to me because I definitely want our listeners to like learn about this. I've never held a tool in my life. I'm just gonna be honest with you. But what happens when you force that cut?
I'll tell you, and this is an invitation for you, but I'm sure there's wood turning clubs around Orlando, and please go find one and just show up. Wood turners are the nicest people in the world. I've never seen anybody treated poorly at a wood turning meeting. Uh,
No, I gotta try.
Certainly, we don't have anything to be snobbish about. We
I
work
love that.
with wood and create a lot of sawdust, and so when you're standing waist deep in sawdust, it's hard to be snobbish. Um, the so here's the basic philosophy, and you mentioned the book, Small Decisions, Big Shifts. In
Yeah.
that book, the premise of that book is that you can't lead others until you can lead yourself.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, if you don't know what you want to do, I use the 5 C's framework in that, context, clarity, conditioning, choice, and character. And if you don't have clarity about what you want, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people can tell you exactly what they don't want, but have a very difficult time telling you what they do want. If you don't have clarity around that, if you don't understand your context, if you aren't willing to get your mind right, you're going to have a heck of a time, and you're going to come off as a inauthentic leader with others.
Mm.
So leading yourself is really important. Now, where the wood turning comes in is, wood turning and people are very similar. When you put a chunk of wood on the lathe, it's just like when you meet a person for the first time. And you really don't know what's inside. You don't know, you get that chunk of wood and it looks like it's good from the outside. It looks like it's going to be friendly. And it's just like people. If you meet somebody and they're pleasant and they're open to a good conversation like you are,
Yes.
um, well, that's great, but then you get inside and you find all the ant trails, and you find maybe some rot, or maybe you find a crack or two, because we all have cracks.
Yeah.
And so that's very similar to the way relationships work, and you just don't know what another person is going through. Think about that, and I think that's a cliche. You never know. You never know what it's like to walk in another's shoes. But I do an exercise quite often, called a personal histories exercise, and I ask questions about people, like what creeps them out, what frightens them the most, where do they fall in sibling order, what was their challenge as a child, etc. And what you find out is people can grow up in the same family or grow up in the same block and have completely separate experiences.
Mm.
And
Mm.
those
Oh.
experiences shape you differently.
Mm. Everybody
So
has a different upbringing too. So
yeah,
yeah.
so you mentioned forcing the cut. The wood turning tools need to be impossibly sharp, and anybody who's run their finger along the edge of a wood turning tool is pretty much certain to be cut, because they're that sharp. Um, if you don't keep it sharp, if you don't do the homework, if you don't, if you don't work on yourself, um, you're going to force the cut, and it's going to be impossibly hard. It's going to feel exhausting. Well, think how many times in relationships it feels exhausting. It feels like you're forcing your way through it.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
who wants to live like that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's very true what you say. And I love this wood turning analogy. This is the first time I ever heard of it. And I just love this. I mean, I just love how you explain it and how you show it. And I just wanted to reiterate what you just mentioned. You can't lead others till you lead yourself. I don't know why, but that sends some type of greatness in my soul, because I am a firm believer of that. You got to love yourself too, right? I don't know. That just is something about that, that just hit me in my heart. And I see that every day. And again, I'm speaking from a corporate lady perspective here. I see that a lot in my world, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people do as well.
Well, and let's talk about the leadership journey a little bit.
Yeah.
It's going from doing to being. So in your job, you're doing,
Yeah.
and at some point you're harvested. So at some point the tree comes down, and you're harvested to do something else, to lead people, and you start on the journey of what have I done, or what am I doing, to what am I being. It's a difficult journey, and if people hold on too tightly to the things that they have had, they'll never get to where they want to be.
That is very true. I have to really, really remember that. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, because we're having a real conversation here, because that's what we do here. In my world, you get on the conference call with these so-called leaders, and it's just like, how the hell did this person become a director?
Yeah,
How on earth is this person a VP? They're first of all, they're introverts, or they don't have any people skills. They're not people, I guess, if you could say that. And it's just kind of like you scratch your head, and it's just like, man, what is going on here?
yeah, yeah,
Mm. And
yeah. And I see it all the time.
we see it all the time in corporate world, because and I like that, because you speak about leadership without posturing. I love that and I respect that from you so much. And especially in a world that rewards noise and how these leaderships stay grounded in character. I feel like that's very important. And I want to take it back because you mentioned the five words, the five C's, right? The
Yeah,
context, clarity, conditioning, choice, and character. That's for our listeners. But
yeah.
in all honesty, as an expert yourself, which one of those words leaders struggle with the most? Let's say
That's a
it out
great
there.
that's a that's a great question. I have to think about that. Um, I think it has to do with conditioning. Because most of the executives that I have worked with pretty much have a clear idea of what they want. They have an understanding of what their situation is, um, but it's changing what what they think about things.
Mhm.
I've got a number of family businesses that I work with, and the owners, as they age, start to get into some definitive mindsets. They start to get scared of themselves. They don't want to expand as much as they did when they were younger and more aggressive and that kind of thing. And those fixed mindsets become a real problem
Interesting.
because they can't get out of their own way.
Mm. How do you break away from that? How do you stay relevant in the game then? As a
Well,
leader with the change in society. I'm sorry. Just wanted to add
yeah,
that.
well, and the that's good because I do talk about that in the book that's coming out in a few weeks. Um, is I don't want to be relevant. I'm not going to talk about the latest TikToker. You
Yeah.
know, pop culture. Hey, pop culture. That train has left the station, and I'm not on the train. Uh,
Mm.
but I want to be able to trade in the free range of ideas, the things that really matter, understanding what is going on in the world, and not being a part of it, but being able to understand it so that I can stay with my clients. And again, that's one of the things that is so hard to do is you know. Warren Buffett said he was doing an interview with the Wall Street Journal not long ago, and he said, "How do I know when I'm old?"
Wow.
And he's 91 years old, and he said, "How do I know when I'm old?
Yeah,
Is it
how?
when I give up? Is it when I stop reading? Is it when I stop learning? Is it when I stop participating in life?" But
Mm.
how do I know when I get old? And that's the question that everybody should ask themselves is, look, we all fear getting old. But if we're lucky, we're all going to be there.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
how can I do all those things? How can I keep reading? How can I keep learning? How can I keep growing?
Mm.
Because if you're not growing, you're dying.
It's like we have to continue to evolve ourselves. I'm a firm believer, and somebody told me this in my 20s, that there is always room for opportunity for growth, no matter what age you are, no matter what kind of leader you are, there's always opportunity for growth. And
Yeah.
you can always learn something. And I like that because I don't know, that just took me back to my 20s. Somebody told me that, and they have said to me, even the biggest leaders in our society right now, they're learning something new. They have to because they need to continue to stay, and I hate to use the word relevant or up to the society or the demanding changes of society, right? We have to do it.
So Iris, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Um, how do you stay sharp? How do you keep your edge?
I keep my edge and I like to stay sharp by staying in tune with the utmost changes in our culture. Not fully being able to adapt myself to those changes from I'm sorry, from those changes, but learning from them. learning how I could, okay, so there's this new skill that we just incorporated in our world now, which is AI. How can I use that to my potential but not sound like a robot? That's a big one that just came. So for me, it's adapting to a new skill and using that strategically but not abusive, if that makes sense.
Sure.
I'm
So um, does doing this podcast and being introduced to a whole lot of different lines of thought, does that help you keep your edge as well?
It does. It really does. It definitely helps me open my mind to a different way of thinking, a different way of leading, a different way to educate others. I love helping others. It really does. It is an eye opener for me, and it makes me question ways on how I could improve myself or what changes I need to make in my life. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It definitely is good. I love that. I love that. But I thought about that because that's very important to me, and I think this is going to hone into our listeners, especially in the corporate world and the healthcare world, whatever kind of world that you in. I feel like leaders need to somehow understand that there's always room for opportunity for growth or for improvement anywhere. You can't be perfect, right? There's no perfect individual.
That's right. That's right.
And I definitely wanted to shift the conversation and talk about your books because you mentioned them. I mean, you have some really great books out there, like Small Decisions, Big Shift is one that's already been released. We touched base on that. You
Right.
talked about your second book, Every Dog Has His Day. You kind of like touch base on that coming out soon here. You said in May? Did you
Yep.
mention?
It's the subtitle is Reflections on Life, Love, and the Lathe.
Oh, I
Um,
love that. And you have
yeah,
many
and
dogs. Yeah, right?
yeah, I'm really proud of that book. It's not prescriptive at all. It's reflective. And then I've got another one coming out next October, which is tentatively called Handoffs. My publisher and I are working on the title, but it's a family parable of a logistics company that is going through some tough times and uses the 5 C's framework to find a way out.
Wow. So it's overall a family fable about crisis and survival, right? That's what it sounds like.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm. So let me ask you something, Chip. What do
Sure.
you hope your readers feel when they close? I mean, when they close your books, like when they start the chapter of that next book or start reading it. What's that one thing you hope our listeners gain from them? Tell me
I
a
think
few.
across the spectrum is I want the writing to be accessible and personal. Um, Small Decisions, Big Shift was an extremely personal story, and I told a number of personal stories along the way as illustrations of each of the 5 C's. Um, every dog is all personal, it's funny because I sent it to the publisher probably last May, and so it's 7 months ago or 7 or 8 months ago, and about every month or two, I actually take it out and read it, and as long as it gives me goosebumps every time I read it, I'm know that the readers will feel the same.
Because that's that personable, right? It has
Yeah,
that personal touch to it. I
yeah,
think I'm gonna tell you something that it just hit me now too. When I was going to grad school, when I was writing this paper, I couldn't gather my thoughts, and one of my professors, very intelligent young lady, she said, "Well, I know you have to like talk about this paper, you got to write it, but if it's not personable, it's not good. I'm just gonna grade you an F." I'm like, "What do you
mhm,
mean?" She's like, you always have to be personable in your writing because if it's not personal in some way or some shape or some form, it's not going to be good, you know?
right.
So, and I love that you said that because I could relate to that because that's one of the other advices that I had received, when I was going to grad school. It's like, oh my God. And I kid you not, ever since that, I remember writing papers and always adding a little hint of my personal opinion, my thoughts, or my thoughts about it. What did I feel? And it just made such a good paper because you added your thoughts. So I just wanted to put that out there. It definitely sounds like every dog has his day, comes from a personal perspective there, and any handoffs as well sounds very interesting. Good there. And I like it how you incorporate the 5 C's there. That's interesting. I would love to see how that family incorporates that for sure.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm. That was very interesting. I want to do something fun with you. I don't know why. My soul is taking me there. I want to ask you a rapid reflection question, and you have to finish a sentence. I don't know. I just thought about this. If you don't mind finishing the sentence for our listeners, I think this will be fun. I know it may be silly, but tell me quickly, leadership is what to you?
Leadership is authentic.
It's authentic. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
can
Authentic.
authentic. Burnout teaches us what?
Our limits.
Mm, our limits. I like that. Patience is what?
Everything.
Reinvention requires
Rethought.
rethought. I love that. And the last one, the small decision that changed my life was?
There's 1,000 of them.
Well, if you could pick one that you knew, that you just know, what would that be?
Just getting into my own business.
Mm,
Leaving
own
the
boss.
corporate world and saying I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, being your own boss, right?
Yep.
Oh, I just love that. I just wanted to add that on there because this conversation took me there and I had to add it on there for a little pizzazz. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective, Ship. And I love it. For our listeners right there that want to continue to follow your beautiful work and learn from you, continue to follow your stories, these wonderful books that you have out there, where can they find you?
Well, I have a website, scholzassociates.com. I'm sure you're going to put it in the show notes. And my email address is real simple. It's chip@scholzassociates.com. The books are the book out right now is on Amazon, and the one coming out will be. It's also on audiobook platforms. In fact, if you are a Spotify subscriber, you can download the audiobook, and it's also on barnesandnoble.com. And I'm on just about every social, so Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. And people can find me.
Oh, thank you so much for letting us know where we could continue to follow your work. Because, hey, you have like what? You have your second book coming, you got a third book coming. You're just
Well,
getting started, it sounds like.
actually, the one that came out was my fourth,
Oh,
and
wow. Sorry, I got
so
that wrong. I'm sorry.
yeah, so there's a story that goes with it, but the two first ones I wrote before the stroke, and I wrote with other people, so there were writing partners that were involved with that, and then um, what got me back into writing was this thing called Storyworth. And
Mm.
Storyworth, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but Storyworth is a platform that sends you a question once a week and you write the story of the question. And at the end of a year, they actually take all those questions and publish it in a book. So
Really?
that
Okay.
got me into writing again after the stroke. And that's when I completed Small Decisions, Big Shifts. So it had been 14 years since I published anything.
Wow. So you storybook.com. I'm gonna have to
Story,
look into
story
that
worth.
myself.
Yeah,
Storyworld.com.
yeah,
Wow, I love that. And again, if you could let our listeners know, every day it sends you a question. Can you repeat that again just for
yeah.
them to
So
know?
it's Storyworth,
Mhm.
WRTH.com. And
Okay.
every day it sends you, or every week it sends you a question. Like questions like who'd you go to prom with? What was your first
Nice.
car? What were your parents like when you were a kid? That kind of thing. And you just write that story. And my kids really appreciate that. I mentioned to you earlier that I'm a girl dad, and
You
I've got
did?
3 daughters, and so each one of them have a copy of the book, and my wife and I have a copy of the book, and it was funny. My oldest daughter said to me, which you could take in a lot of different ways, but she said to me, she said, you know, I really like the book now, but I'm really going to like it when you're gone. and,
Oh.
and that sounds really ironic, but it's true. I'm not going to be around to tell those stories, and she can go back and see and read all the stories that I told over a life.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. I like her honesty, though. She seems like a very blunt person. Like, I like that. Hey, I'm gonna like this when you're gone, Dad. But I
She
like
works.
that though.
She works for me, so
So it makes it easier for her to be like, "Hey, Dad, I'm gonna like this." But I like that though. But it's true though. It's
yeah,
definitely leaving a legacy from your own personal perspective, from
that's
that personal vault of your feelings and stuff. So Chip, I just have to say this has been such a beautiful, enlightening, a breath of fresh air conversation. I can't thank you enough for coming in here and sharing your beautiful stories and what you have in store in the future. But I have to ask you something before we transition here to closure. If someone right now listening to the podcast feels like they're not in a right path, they want to get better. Feels like life interrupted their plan somehow. What would you tell them? I mean, I don't want to look into like an inspirational quote but what would you just tell them to do?
find a coach. And here's the thing. I'm not repping my own services, but find a coach. Hire a coach. There are all kinds of coaches that are around, and the benefit of the coach is they have no skin in the game. Their only agenda is you. They're there to make you the best version of you can possibly be. So they're not like a spouse or a partner, because a spouse or a partner is going to tell you, is basically going to tell you what their perspective is. A boss, it's certainly not a boss. It's certainly not your best friend, because everybody has an agenda. But a coach only has you as their agenda. And it is a marvelous relationship. I've had a number of coaches in my life, and I guess the best way to be a coach is to get a coach to find out what it's like. And I can just say from my personal experience, man, it's fantastic. It really is. When it's good, it's really good.
Oh, I love that. And thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of us need that in our lives. Needs to just do it.
That's
Get a
right.
coach. And I like how you had mentioned something earlier. You believe in that quality versus quantity. I mean, to this day, one of your most friendships you had mentioned was over 20 years,
Yep.
through coaching. And for you, it's more than just a transactional, right? You had
That's it.
mentioned that it's more than it's about having a relationship through lived experiences. And I love how you said that.
That's right. That's
I
right.
love that. I love that. Chip, this has been a phenomenal interview. I just, oh, mi gente bonita, my beautiful people. Did you hear all of that? This was all great. I feel like the biggest takeaway for myself is that real leadership isn't loud, it's consistent, it's intentional. There's a lot here to unpack and just an overall beautiful conversation, Chip. I just, again, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And
Iris, it has been my absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for your consideration and having me on.
of course. And to my beautiful listeners, if this episode spoke to you, share it. Share it. Send it to a leader who needs to slow down. Send it to somebody that needs to kind of take a step back and reevaluate their life, rebuild it after a certain disruption that happened in their life. I want to thank you all for downloading, listening, and continuing to grow with me. Thank you all. This has been Conversations with Iris. Until next time, my beautiful people, take care.